If you're looking at the NFL Conference Championship games and trying to decide what actually matters, this video is for you. These two games get picked apart more than any other spot all year, and that's usually when people start to overthink things. We crushed these championship games last season by focusing on roles, volume, and matchups, not just headlines. So in this video, I'm breaking down the exact picks that I like for the AFC and NFC Championship games and why they make sense based on how these games are actually played. Let's get into it. Starting in the AFC, Patriots at Broncos, and specifically Courtland Sutton, because this is one of those spots where the matchup tells you everything before the number even matters. The two picks I'm fading here are Courtland Sutton's longest reception and him to score a touchdown, because there's a couple red flags. The first one is the Patriots just picked off CJ Stroud 4 times in the first half last week, so before we go any further, ask yourself what they're about to do to Jarrett Stidham. Now layer this on top. Christian Gonzalez is expected to shadow Sutton all night, and with Gonzalez on the field, New England allows just 6.5 yards per target to wide receivers, so that alone limits his ceiling, but then it gets even cleaner near the goal line. Gonzalez has allowed just 1 touchdown in coverage all season, so Sutton loses quarterback, draws the toughest shadow matchup in the league, and sees efficiency disappear both deep and in the red zone. So that's why fading him two ways makes some sense here. Now, this next player is where people usually push back, but the matchup is doing more work than you think. Let's talk about Stefon Diggs. The picks I like are Stefon Diggs targets and Stefon Diggs to not score a touchdown. And yeah, those two things can coexist. Here's why. Denver has been much stronger at defending outside wide receivers than in the slot. Diggs, meanwhile, has run a team high 54% of his routes from the slot, so the involvement doesn't just disappear. In fact, it's already been there. He's seen 30 targets over his last 5 games, right around 6 per game, but here's the detail that actually matters. Denver's given up just 1 touchdown all season to slot receivers, so Diggs can be active here. He can still move the chains and still come up empty when it counts. That's why I like targets for volume, but no touchdown for the matchup. Now, if you think this game is going to be slow or one-dimensional, this next one won't land, but if you're looking at how Denver just got exposed, it makes perfect sense. Next up is Rhamondre Stevenson, and this is a volume story from start to finish. The picks that I like are rushing yards and anytime touchdown. The rushing yards number is a dead giveaway because we're getting a huge discount here after he just faced the number 2 rush defense in the NFL last week, but even in that matchup, he still averaged 85 rushing yards per game over his last 3 matchups. So then we add in the workload. Rhamondre has already logged 34 opportunities in the playoffs. He's clearly separated himself in this backfield overall. And then we look at the opponent. Denver just gave up 174 total yards to the Bills backfield, so the yardage floor is there and the touchdown equity follows naturally. So that's kind of why we're playing him in both ways and why that's justified here. And this is where people tend to miss the secondary angle. We need to talk about TreVeyon Henderson. The pick that I like is rushing yards because, yeah, the efficiency hasn't been there. His yards per carry has been pretty rough, but that's not the whole story. He's beaten this number in 4 straight games, averaging 47 rushing yards per game, and he's really not a plotter. He's already got 4 touchdowns of 50-plus yards this season, so even though the yards per carry hasn't looked so good, he's shown us the upside. All it takes is 1 crease, especially against a Denver defense that, again, just allowed 174 total yards to the Buffalo backfield. So even without massive volume, the breakaway path is real. All right, now let's shift from between the 20s to how these drives could actually finish. Because when the Patriots get close, Hunter Henry becomes the focal point. I like this one, and especially the anytime touchdown, because it's pure roll. He owns a 34% red zone target share, which is higher than any other tight end. That's elite usage, and the matchup reinforces it. Denver funnels targets to the tight end position, just gave up another touchdown to Dalton Kincaid last week. So when New England gets inside the 20, this is where the ball's going. By the way, if you want access to my touchdown model early, every single week, go to touchdownpicks.com or hit the first link in the description and put in your email. I'll send you the best touchdown picks from every game and some long shots along the way, and it's 100% free. Now for another clean fade, Kayshon Boutte. The pick that I like is him not to score a touchdown, which we don't need a ton of creativity to find because Denver has an elite cornerback in its own right in Pat Surtain. They've been the best secondary in the NFL on deep passes as well, exactly kind of where Boutte lives. They allow the lowest catch rate on throws 20-plus yards downfield. Explosive touchdowns are already hard to come by, and Boutte isn't the only receiver dealing with Surtain, which limits his scoring chances even further. That's not a spot to chase a touchdown. Before we close this game, there are 2 rushing-related plays that I think are a little bit overlooked, and they definitely matter. Let's talk about RJ Harvey because his role is more stable than people think. The pick that I like is his receiving yards. Yeah, J.K. Dobbins has a real shot to play, but he's coming off that Liz Frank injury and is really not a threat to Harvey's receiving role anyway. That's the distinction that matters here. The Patriots have given up the 6th most receptions to running backs, and Harvey's averaged 39 receiving yards over his last 4 games. So even in a backfield that could rotate early, Harvey's passing game role remains intact, and that's why this number exists and why you shouldn't overthink it. And my final pick in the AFC Championship game is Drake May. The pick that I like is higher on his receiving yards. This one's really straightforward. The Broncos have been getting destroyed by running quarterbacks, and when May scrambles, it's not accidental, it's a part of the offense. So when you combine matchup plus roll, the path is clear. But if your fantasy season isn't going how you hoped, this may help. I've teamed up with DraftKings Pick 6, the official daily fantasy sports partner of the NFL, to give you another way to make game day more interesting. Here's exactly how it works. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats, passing yards, touchdowns, things like that. Then it's basically you calling how a player performs and seeing your picks come to life on every snap. And here's the part you should know. Right now, new DraftKings customers who play $5 or more get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly. So if you're new, you play $5 or more and they drop $50 in Pick 6 credits right into your account. All you need to do is download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use promo code HOLKA to unlock that offer. In partnership with DraftKings Pick 6, the crown is yours. The night game is the NFC Championship game. We have Rams at Seahawks, and let's start with Puka Nacua because everything in this matchup flows through him, and the history here is impossible to ignore. The 2 picks that I like are receptions and receiving yards, but before we talk numbers, let's talk precedent. A month ago against Seattle, Puka went for 225 receiving yards on 16 targets. That's not a fluky spike game, though Davante Adams didn't play. It's really a defense that was completely overwhelmed, and when you zoom out, it lines up perfectly. Across his career in this exact matchup, Puka's averaged 10 catches per game. Seattle simply does not have the personnel to slow him down. Now, here's the detail that pushes this from good to obvious. With Davante Adams playing nearly 90% of his snaps out wide, Puka is free to move all over the formation. That matters because Seattle's given up the lowest yards per target to outside wide receivers, so Puka doesn't need to win outside. He wins inside, he wins in space, and we've already seen exactly what that looks like in this exact matchup. So what I want is receptions for the floor and yards for the ceiling. Same player, 2 different paths, but both are driven clearly by volume. Now, if Puka is the engine of this game, then the next player kind of determines how fast it actually moves. Let's talk about Matthew Stafford because his role ties the entire game script together. The pick that I like is Matthew Stafford pass attempts. At first glance, this number looks pretty reasonable, but once you understand the environment, it's not. Seattle's forced the 5th most pass attempts in the NFL this season. That alone should raise some eyebrows. But here's the part most people miss. Over the last 6 playoff games, Stafford's averaged 42 pass attempts per game. And when that stage gets bigger, the volume doesn't shrink. It expands. In the playoffs, he has 36 or more pass attempts in 7 of his last 9 games. So when you see this number sitting there where it is, it's not aggressive, it's too low. This isn't about touchdowns or efficiency. It's about trusting who Stafford is when the game demands throwing. And if you think it's all about airing it out, and that's the whole game script, then the next player proves it's not going to be just one-dimensional. Next up is Kyren Williams, and this is one of the cleanest role-based setups on the board. There are 2 picks that I like here. The first is Kyren Williams' receiving yards. No team in the league has given up more catches to running backs than the Seahawks, and Kyren's also beaten this receiving number in 6 of his last 7 games. That's not noise, that's usage, and he's not just a runner. He's a core part of the passing game right now, facing a defense that bleeds production to that exact role. But this isn't just about yardage because I also like Kyren Williams' anytime touchdown. He's scored 3 times over the last 2 weeks, and once again, Seattle's allowed more catches to running backs than anyone, so there's multiple paths, and that's why he shows up twice. All right, now let's flip to the other side quickly because this next role has been quietly consistent all season. We have to talk about Jackson Smith-Njigba because this is one of the cleanest usage profiles on the entire slate. The 2 picks that I like are JSN receptions and receiving yards, but in some builds, you could go towards anytime touchdown as well. Here's why. The Rams have given up the 5th highest yards per target to outside wide receivers. They've also allowed the 5th highest catch rate to that same area of the field. JSN already posted 17 catches over 2 games against the Rams this season. He's also already scored in this exact matchup a few weeks ago. So when you look at the role, the volume's there, the efficiency is there, and the matchup hasn't changed. So that's why receptions gives you some safety. Yards is going to give you a little bit of upside, but the touchdown is there if you want to get really aggressive. Before wrapping this up, there's one more role that's completely shifted, and it matters. The situation with Kenneth Walker has changed with Zach Charbonnet tearing his ACL last week, so the pick that I like is anytime touchdown. Last week, Walker immediately stepped into a massive role, 143 total yards, 3 touchdowns, just an absolutely nuclear performance. And now we get to Rams defense that's been getting destroyed by big plays. We've already seen this exact matchup hit. Walker himself scored a 55-yard touchdown against the Rams in week 16. If Seattle scores on the ground, this is the guy. Simple as that. I'm not willing to ignore the Davante Adams touchdown pick either. He scored 11 TDs inside the 10-yard line this season. Only Amon-Ra St. Brown and Trey McBride had more red zone targets. That's elite usage when touchdowns are actually created, and it doesn't really have to be a guessing game here. It doesn't really matter the game script either. It's all about trusting who gets the ball when the points are on the line. And finally, the one that people really aren't talking about is Sam Darnold. The one that I like is completions. Across 2 games against the Rams this season, he averaged 26 completions, and the Rams have forced the 6th most pass attempts in the NFL. So, what we just talked about earlier with Stafford, this is another spot where the environment pushes volume to the passing game. And when teams play the Rams, they throw. And Darnold's already shown that he can clear this number in this exact matchup. That's it for today. If you want to support the channel so I can keep giving out these picks for free, be sure and check out DraftKings Pick 6. There's a link in the description, or use code HOLKA when you sign up. Hit subscribe, and we'll see you next time.